I'm Jane Chick. I work for a company called World to Worlds, which is a global consultancy in 3D immersive and web-based virtual events. To my left is Terry Thorpe, who is a fellow of the ACM, a certified Reiki master, a creator of internet-based applications, and principal of CodeSpace, which is a very well-known European consultancy in 3D immersive technology, who have served enterprises, banks, and concerns across the continent and in the United Kingdom. And to his left is David Gardner, who is a serial entrepreneur, founder of PeopleClick, a former employee of Unisys, founder of, creator and I guess seller of 6 companies, and now on his 7th CEO of VENUGEN, which is an extremely innovative 3D immersive platform provider with web delivery. These are the shortened versions of their biographies, and I hope that you will visit virtualedgesummit.com and read the complete versions. They are worth a look. I'm going to sprint through my slides, and this is the first time I've tried to control my slides, I guess. There we go. Since the topic here is 3D immersive technology for business engagement, I thought that my role to try to explore what business engagement is. It's not 100% the same as consumer engagement. It's usually used in the public press as a kind of a term of snark to talk about why things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter are better than material consumed online in traditional ways, either mediated by search or mediated by link surfing. Back in 2009, in May, I think, of 2009, the Internet Advertising Board developed metrics about this stuff in a first essay, and those are interesting documents. I recommend that you search them out. What they talk about primarily is people interacting with systems and applications. They talk about relevant actions, the kinds of things that you want people to do in online spaces in order to provoke ROI and to qualify themselves better, like downloading white papers. They talk about counting repeat visits. They talk about consuming update feeds and subscribing socially to one another. Making reputational assumptions about things like who's the best blogger in this space and who are less good bloggers. And of course, they're about registration, sharing of personal information, and some level of permanent visibility in the milieu. In other words, if you participate in consumer engagement platforms, you're doing things like creating a page on Facebook, a page on Facebook, and updating it periodically. So it's about people interacting with applications, mostly with machines, and doing so repeatedly in rich ways, talking to each other mostly asynchronously, and in the process sharing of themselves and participating to some degree, arguably, in what might be called community. This is all good stuff. It's all highly measurable because it's happening on the conventional web. It's great for generating leads, but ultimately, your mileage may vary, but I personally find it a little cool. The problem with that and business is that business engagement is classically hot. Excuse me, why does this advance twice every time I click the thing? The simple-minded button that advances once. That was bad. I think I'll stick with the other way.
That's a button.
Oh,
Advance.
okay.
That's a button.
Oh, I like advance. I like one advance. All right. The thing with business engagement is that you want people's full attention. In a sales meeting and a conference, you want people to look at you the way you people are being kind enough to look at me today. And you want, ideally, for this to be a two-way thing. You want it to be governed by people's normal notions of civility, rules of order, the sense of the need to pay attention, to take turns. You want, ideally, a flow in both directions of questions and answers involving confirmation. You want to know what people are thinking right now. Ideally, in fact, it would be best if people would raise their hands and tell me if they're getting this, if I should slow down, if they're very bored, if this is not what they were expecting. I would love to know all that, probably because of the fourth wall present in traditional theaters. I can't know that. It's hard to stand up in a room like this. But in a smaller group, I would see your eyes clearly. I would see whether you were vegging out or not listening or checking your email or otherwise not engaging. So ultimately we would be closer with one another. And ultimately, from hot engagement situations, you want results. You want to close a sale, you want to define some action items, you want to make a next appointment, you want to move the relationship forward, and ultimately you want to do what business does, which is make money. It's the same rules regardless of where you are. Ultimately, although people will go to conferences and certainly they'll say, my gosh, what a brilliant keynote that person, there were 2,000 people there, and Bill Gates, he was just fabulous, and we loved his demonstration and we loved his video. What they really go back to shows for, at least in my opinion, is the hot engagements that they have in between the pursuit sessions. The people that they meet by happenstance, the people who come to their booth and spend half an hour talking to them, the people who give them business cards and say, please call me next week when we're all home from the show. This is a really interesting product. Ultimately, I think that shows live and die on the basis of those hot interactions, and those hot interactions are, of course, classically very hard to quantify. But there's no doubt that when one sends a sales team to a large event and spends many hundreds of thousands of dollars doing so, re-upping for that event next year depends primarily on whether the sales team thought it was a good idea. And that depends directly on hot engagements, their sense that an event is producing the kind of engagements that lead to closing sales and business. The next couple of days, you'll be looking at a lot of what we call flat web virtual events. These are fabulous platforms. They are enhanced envelopes around webinar technology, most of them. They are designed to show video, to promote chat, to allow the remote presentation of information very effectively from speakers housed in a physical location. They try very hard to be hot with interactive chat and a physical geography and networking lounges in which people are supposed to get together and exchange business cards, but they tend in actual practice not to be that hot. They are closer to things like Facebook and LinkedIn and other cool engagement or consumer engagement products. They're terrific for getting registrations, for recording relevant actions, for Q&A. They provide extraordinary ease of entry and ease of use. They're great for demand gen and lead generation. They're maybe okay for community development in theory. Certainly Facebook has the power to develop communities. Maybe some of these flat web virtual event platforms will be able to do that. But in actuality, that's actually seldom the case. There is not much repeat use of these platforms, except in the sense that they allow the passive consumption of live event data in recorded form over months and months, which is a great strength, but not the same thing as long-term community. Cool engagement is absolutely okay. It depends on where you sit. If you're doing a real event, it's great for extending a physical world event. It doesn't cannibalize core event revenue, typically. It lets you stretch the business value of an event through time, through persistent presence on the web. It might even let you maintain community for an event year-round, and of course it's green. But unfortunately, what business engagement needs is hot engagement. They need to be able to explore, people need to be able to explore new markets at low cost. They need to be able to replace physical events with online offerings. They need to avoid the commoditization curves associated with web technology. This is just the nature of web technology and standards, that things get cheaper over time, and perceptions of value as a result need to be amplified consistently over time. They need to be able to enable business development in a world where money is tight and people are traveling less, and the pressures on events to produce revenue and create attendees and promote what events are great at promoting, which in terms of face-to-face events is hot engagement, is getting harder and harder. What we're talking about is 3D immersion, and 3D immersion is a hot medium. It is about people meeting in avatar form in a fully immersive space, very much like, let's get this term out of the way, a video game. It's about them looking at one another and paying attention to one another, both in small groups, i.e. you are aware of the person sitting next to you in a theater like this, as well as the speakers. You can communicate in any direction via various means, both interruptive and non-interruptive with these people, including voice. It is fundamentally, and these gentlemen will say it far better than me in their own presentations, something that gives maybe 95% of the bang that one expects to get from telepresence with a fraction of the cost. Its heat derives from the use of easily integrated social tools, data visualization. In these pictures, these are builds that World2World's contributed to for IBM and other customers. We're looking at a history of oil data in the left hand, and on the right hand, we're looking at a system for the consensual assembly of architectural systems. It's called WikiTree. It provides a method for communities of interest to come together around large architectural projects and share their ideas and vote ideas up and down. It allows. I'm sorry, it's very frustrating, this double advance. 3D, of course, allows the creation of lavish and interactive models, which is fabulous for anybody who needs to sell something complicated and wants to show it. This is a thing we did about a year ago for Sun Oracle. They wanted a method for explaining very vividly the process of evolving a data center from a legacy framework to a contemporary framework and forward to high-performance computing and new cooling paradigms. And so we built that for them. In a sense, it's a 3D PowerPoint presentation, but you would not imagine how effective it has been as a tool for educating people about process and about their options. Advancing these models, making them move through space, forward and backward in time, as you were standing there and looking at the details, is a very powerful experience. And it gets heat from self-investment. In most of these environments, one's avatar has a personality that extends beyond the immediate event. It is not just a little puppet. It may have your face on it, as these gentlemen will describe. In this case, we're looking at a gentleman named Takufu Zubri, who's the star of a PBS series called History Detectives, and his avatar is on the left. This investment in a pseudo-physical form and a projection of yourself into the environment is one of the things, among many, that makes this a hot medium, that makes this a medium in which people behave towards one another with much of the same civility and attention as they do in the real world. And of course, there's nothing stopping you from wrapping any of this stuff in the web, which is what World2World characteristically does. We believe that 3D environments, because obviously some of them are navigationally challenging, not all, should be an option rather than a compulsory mode of participation. And so we wrap them in the web, and we wrap them in video, and we provide various points of access and entry. Ultimately, what this means in terms of ROI, the kinds of things that people want to get out of events, is huge engagement times. I'll jump forward, but you can review these numbers later. For a very small investment, you can get huge, long-term, hours and hours and hours and hours, tens of thousands of hours of engagement from what you do in 3D. So with that, I will pass the baton to Terry Thorpe.
Thank you. Thank
you very much.
I'll try and get over the slight glitch. Does anybody know TED? Hands up. TED. There's a thing that I've become recently to realize, which I call TED fascism, which is where once upon a time you could speak for however long you wanted and whatever, and then it got to 16 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 14 minutes, 13 seconds, and 4 slides, sorry Kim, 4 slides with 8 bullet points. I don't do that. So, at some point during my presentation, the security guards will come in, beat me to the floor, take me out, and you will never see me again. Because I don't do that. I don't do that. Thank you for the introduction, John. I am a technologist at heart. The one on this side is the Association of Computing Machinery, which is your technology society. It's quaintly named, and I'm a senior member of that. But one of the fellows of that has won his 2nd Oscar because he owns Pixar. I've won awards. Yes, I do Reiki. Yes, I am a master practitioner of NLP. Yes, I am qualified to do hypnotherapy in the state of California. Where else? And at this point, I'd like to welcome the people at the other end of the camera, because there are some of us in this room, but there are many more on the other end. So and the reason I do that is not egotism. It's just that when someone stands up, the first thing I want to know is, who are you? Please tell me who you are. That's what I do. Anyway, I've been a director of many organisations, one of them Unisys, one of them Coutts. Again, Coutts, if you've never heard of it, is one of the top 100 brands in the world. It's called the Queen's Bank. It's a bank. And if you want to know about politics, talk to me. Because this is serious. There's only one place in the UK where you can have a numbered bank account, Coutts. I work for CodeSpace. I'm a principal of CodeSpace. It's kind of one of the things I do. It's a bit of a hobby. I don't mean that in a bad way. I've been doing it for 3 years, where we don't particularly look at any individual product, so we're agnostic. But we look at what people, we do research and we look at what people are thinking. Some of our clients you may have heard of, one of them particularly being Apple. And journey. 2 delayed flights and my bag arrived today. So, when there are 2 ways of looking at a journey. A journey being something that you go through, or the trials and tribulations of getting to Las Vegas. And the journey for me into, let me call it 3D web, but we'll expand on that, was quite complex. I'm not going to tell you what this is, but there are many ways of looking at 3D web. What I felt is that, these guys will agree with me, someone needs to take control. Someone needs to lead. And that leadership, for me, is in a very practical form. So it's, what do we do? Now, when I first thought about, what's all this about, 3 years ago? I thought about a family tree, and I thought maybe there are all kinds of things which come together like a family tree. And I was wrong, by the way. I'm waiting for the security guards. Really, it was I thought more about waves of change, and I thought, well, okay, I'm a technologist, I can do this. Communications have come a long way. We've done this, we've done that. I've worked with telepresence. In one of my roles, I had every day telepresence meetings. Every day. Fantastic. I had to go to a particular place. The people at the other end had to go to a particular place. It cost a bloody fortune for us both to get to those particular places. So we don't do that, really. So what we do is we tend to do a kind of cheapened version. Do you know what I mean? And if you've ever seen the cheap version of telepresence, it's like watching sock puppets. It's actually worse than being there. So the technology moves on and on and on, and then we get to the 3D web. And one of the problems I've had recently is we've got 3D TV, 3D avatars, etc. So that's confusing people. So there are all kinds of words we will use to try and explain it. And I've heard some fantastic ones today, by the way. So is it 3D webs, 3D worlds, is it immersive, is it deep immersive, is it light immersive, whatever. And in about 2008, I was looking at around about 350 different products. Ignore them. Because in the end, I said, there are only about 6 that actually make any sense and that I would work with. and these are they, and some of them have gone. Sun, for example. And now, if I move the clock on to 2010, I'm saying, okay, I don't like those. What am I now going to work with? And the ones that eventually I would work with would be Venugen, David, Blue Mars, Watching Brief, Unity 3D, brilliant, and I'll talk to you if you want to speak to me later about what I would do with each of these different products. Here's the challenge. There's a chasm that happens when we're trying to deal with technology, and it happens here. So most people, right, I'm an innovator, right, so I don't really care whether it works or not. I'll just do it. And there are early adopters. But to get across this chasm, it has to work. It has to work. Otherwise, you end up with things like this, products which actually don't do it. But there is a tipping point, and the tipping point is in 2011. And in 2011, these immersive worlds will take off. Why? Because in a deep recession, which in the UK we're now calling double dip, in other words, not only have we had a recession, but we're going to have another recession. And when we look at events, we're seeing reduced event budgets, we're seeing reduced footfalls, and it is not working. So we know that the big driver is this. I hate to say it, but it is. So that's okay. So we will do what the British always do. We will keep calm and we will carry on. But in the meantime, we still need to get our products to market. We still need to have events. We still need to do customer focus groups. We still need to educate. So, virtual technologies come from a number of things. The technology is there, and it is there, and you'll see that today. There is a green agenda. Sorry, I don't want you travelling everywhere. I want to keep my CO2 down. And then you get some things happen. So having spoken at a conference in Atlanta, just like this, I was on my way home to London when I got stuck in Paris because of a volcano. Now most people say to me, brilliant Terry, I would love to get stuck in Paris. No you wouldn't, because all I was trying to do is get out. And occasionally we get things like, in the UK, occasionally we get things like snow, which just stops the entire country. I don't know how Sweden do it, but they do, we don't. So, the waves of change, and there are 9 of them here. There could be 100, by the way, and it doesn't really matter. They are waves of change coming together to create what I would describe as a tsunami of change. And when I talk about virtual events, it is all of these things that you can do. And everybody says to me, wait a minute, Terry, I don't like that. I want to do face-to-face. I absolutely want to. I don't want to do virtual. Okay, so you don't use the telephone? You don't use email? Of course you do. It's a question of balance. And then there are some things, and David will do this much better than I do, which is you really need to do this thing called non-verbal communication. I'm waiting for the security guards now. And just take a look at these, because I think these are I just think some of these are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But But wouldn't it be great if you could do that in some kind of virtual world, David? But what if you could? Here's a quick example in terms of finances. So, in 2009, let's have 50 people go to Manchester from the UK. It'll cost £12,000. Let's say we do it virtually, it'll cost £1,000. That's a twelfth the cost. That's a twelfth the cost. That's a big, big, big difference. The analysts say yes, but they haven't been doing. The people like Harvard Business School say yes, get people engaged. And sometimes we say, well, what does that mean? Actually, it means you can measure the difference between someone being engaged and not being engaged by their heartbeat. And it goes on and on and on. I suggest you read all these books, by the way. So who uses it? Well, BP was one of my first clients. They will do things like, right, is it possible to see what's going on under the ground? Well, yes, it is, virtually. It isn't in real life, but it is virtually. And could I do a scenario of an oil problem? Yes, I can. And how much would that save me? About $5 million. Can I do my business graduates virtually? Yes, I can. Why would I do that? Because it's not actually possible to get all of the executives from BP in one place to talk to these people, but it is virtually, and they do that. Then they do that every year, and we all know about IBM, and IBM do lots of things. And when it comes to measuring, yes, people measure. Time is everything. Is this the one and only solution? No, it's not. Focus on what you're going to do. Sniper, not scattergun. You need expertise. Right? So the proposition is that we will do virtual events. I'll show you pseudo events, and you don't need to see these. I'll do immersive. Immersive means that you've got an avatar. This is one of David's avatars. Why immersive? Because it engages you. Why does that mean? And why is that important? Because of productivity. Not my words, by the way, someone else's. And immersive means it makes a difference. One of the terms that sometimes used is cognitive realism. So, here we go. Let's do an event. Here's one that's going to happen on the 14th of February. Client of mine, they said, we want to do an event. Okay, let's do an event. We're going to run this event, not for 2 days, but for 10 months. Why? Because they can. And yes, it's very similar to what you would normally do. So you sign on, you go to a stand, you choose your stand, you go to various places and events. I want to go there, I want to book a meeting with this person, I want to go to their stand, and I want to have a conversation with them. I want to have a seminar. I want to listen to people, like today. I want to talk to people. Why? It works. It actually works. David and I have been working together now for a year. We have never met until today. We know each other well. He looks slightly better in his avatar world, and I am younger and better looking. It's fun. And you know what? Why shouldn't it be? We laugh so much sometimes when we have our virtual events that you think, oh, is this really work? Yes, it is work. But the more engaging something is, the more fun it is, then the better. Yes, and there are all those things. What does Europe think? Europe thinks that the people I've been working with, virtual events, sit alongside people like Cisco. in Europe. And yes, this came out about 3-4 days ago, and Europe thinks this is going to happen. There you go. How did I do?
The magic clicker.
Okay.
So now, which
Was that?
Is it the middle button?
It is the right-hand button.
The right-hand button.
Have a light hand.
I have a right hand. All right, guys, I've got about 6 minutes to
Sorry, Dave.
to talk to you. No problem. We're here to talk about engagement in virtual spaces. How many of you remember this quote from a few years back? Gartner said that by 2010, last year, that 90% of your corporations would be using 3D virtual worlds. Yeah, well, that came and went, didn't it? Forrester said 5 years ago that within the next 5 years, the 3D web would be as important to getting work done and learning done as the internet, the 2D internet is. They'd be equally important to us. What happened? Why isn't the 3D modality today everywhere? Well, I think to be fair, there were a lot of challenges. We always tend to overhype things, for the first 5 years, and then we significantly underestimate the impact those technologies will have in the second 5 years. Well, I think one of the reasons that Terry says this is the year for the 3D web is because this is the 5-year point. This is when the technology suddenly starts to mature and fulfill the promises. So we were in the hype cycle a few years back, and there were all kinds of issues. The technology was very, very difficult to build. It had to run everywhere, on everybody's machine, low-end video cards, through firewalls and proxy servers. And by the way, it needs to integrate every kind of content ever created. That's a big, and it needs to download in under a minute and run in your browser too. That's a big challenge. The apps were difficult to learn and use. You had to spend an hour on Orientation Island and learn how to fly. It wasn't something that was quick and easy to use like sitting down and installing and sitting in a WebEx presentation. The price was often high if you wanted anything custom built or installed behind the firewalls. All of these issues hindered the 3D web taking root today. Now, I believe all those issues have been resolved. And I think I can prove to you that every single one of those issues is not an issue anymore. But there is one issue that remains that I think is more important than all those other issues, because it is a real issue. I think that we have failed to make the case of how important engagement is to online learning, to online meetings. If you have engagement, you know what engagement looks like. There's an energy, there's a participation, there's creativity and problem solving and participation and retention of material. That's what engagement is. But it's very, very hard to measure, and it's very, very hard to create online. I think I used the same quote you used, Terry.
You did, yeah.
Great minds. The Gallup said $350 billion a year lost from disengaged employees. I saw another study where 60% of the people in a WebEx class were not on the presentation screen the majority of the session. That means 60% of the people, the majority of the time, weren't looking at the material even being presented. So we've got to, if you don't have engagement, you have a tremendous inability to solve problems and to learn and to do. We've got to create engagement. And this is the mantra of the 3D web. I believe that people believe that learning can be more natural and engaging, that it can be faster and more effective. But we've got to make a hard case for this. What got me involved in the 3D space, and I feel like I'm doing a virtual meeting now because the lights are so bright I can't really see you, so I'm just talking into the mist here. But Gavin mentioned telepresence, and what fascinated me a few years ago is why would people spend $400,000 or $500,000 building out a telepresence room when WebEx was $49 a month? What is the difference? What makes that telepresence so worth so much more? Was the fact that you can see who's talking and hear the sound directionally, and really what is it? The fact is telepresence is engaging, and 2D screen sharing is not. So the question came about, might there be a way that we could build a telepresence-like experience, but do it for the same price and practical usability of a tool like WebEx? So before we could do that, we had to understand what creates engagement. I'd like to mention that all of this is in a white paper, and if you drop me off your business card, I'll be happy to send you a copy of it. But this is a white paper that we developed. It references over 35 studies. And just to quickly cover, these are the factors that I believe create engagement. One is focus. Being able to see where people are looking. Who's talking to who? Who said that? Who did they say it to? When everyone turns and looks at you, your energy level, that heartbeat factor, goes up dramatically. It's called the spotlight effect. It's very engaging. You don't have that, you come down several points. There's lots of subtleties, and I can't talk about them all, but one is just we vote with our focus. Several people start talking in the room at once. What do? We turn and we look at the person we want to hear, and the other person shuts up. Well, I've looked at hundreds of hours of video, and this happens several times a minute. This is what makes a conversation move along and everyone participates. And whereas on an audio call, we're just kind of talking over each other and this is why we feel so fatigued after a 2-hour audio call as opposed to a 2-hour in-person meeting. So focus, empowerment, the ability to feel that you have some control over what's going on, where you want to look, if you want to zoom your eyes in on the content. The feeling that if you want to shake your head and nod that you agree or disagree, if you have no degree of control, you become a passive bystander and you turn your brain off, and that's disengaging. Presence, and that involves feeling that you're sharing a space, a sense of presence, hearing the sound directionally. Intimacy, being able to recognize a person's face, bringing the human element. When you don't have the human element in there, you depersonalize people, you get the road rage effect. But anyway, all of these create engagement. And the point that I want to make here is just that the 3D web now, you can install these applications in under a minute. You can learn to use them in 30 seconds. I challenge you, you can learn to use these tools in 30 seconds. You never touch the keyboard. You click and drag where you want to look, you use your mouse wheel to zoom focus, and you right-click on content. If you want to integrate content, you just click on it, drag it from your desktop, and let it go in the 3D world. Everyone sees it. They're literally that fast and that easy, and they're cheaper than WebEx to use today. But you will not get that in your organization until you can make an argument for why engagement is important. That's the argument we have to win. So the 3D platforms today, I believe, give you the most engagement with the most practical usability, the lowest cost, the most accessibility, none of the obstacles that telepresence has. So let me ask you, if you had to spend 3 hours listening to me, would you rather do it like this? Or would you rather do it like this? Another thing that's very engaging about the 3D environment is you're not limited to a 13-inch screen where you can share one screen share at a time. In a 3D world, you have unlimited space. You can choose a venue with a viewer the size of this whole wall. And everyone can screen share at the same time or drag content in and put it all up side by side and laser point at it and whiteboard over it. This is engaging. The other thing that's very, very important about creating engagement is being able to double-click on applications and work with them without having to leave the 3D environment. Just click on them, work with them, and everyone sees in real time what you're doing. And then as Gavin said, the faces. Let me tell you, we did a lot of focus groups and with people who had never experienced, they never even played Xbox before. And when we put their faces on their avatar, they stopped calling the avatar it, and they started calling it me. And so don't underestimate how important it is to get your face on that avatar. If you're walking around looking like something out of a SpongeBob cartoon, it's very hard to understand how important that is as a serious business tool. And then the ability to choose lots of different... How many rooms do you get when you spend out $400,000 for a telepresence room? You get one room. I hope it works if you want to have a panel discussion or a debate or a focus group or you want to simulate a courtroom. But in the virtual world, you can choose many, many different venues. Download them in seconds. So you pick the right venue. Do you want a circle where everyone's facing each other or what's going to facilitate the experience that you want? And then finally, well, I guess that is finally, I wanted to do a live demo for you, but I don't think we're going to have time. So I want to show you just a little video clip of an in-world present. I want you just to look at this, and I forgive the sales nature of this because it was my backup plan. But I want to show you 2 minutes of video to just see how engaging these browser-based virtual worlds can be. And then if you'd like to see a live demonstration later on, I'll be set up over here. Let's roll that video.
While we wait for the video control, we did get some comments and questions from the NRG group that explored that on Twitter, which I'm going to hold on to here.
I think we're good to go now.
Okay.
There we go.
Focus groups said that VENUGEN is perfect for company meetings and training.
And you know, the customers I've talked to all say they love the fact they can use us for both.
Hey, guys.
Hey, David.
Hey, David.
Hey, do you mind if I show the folks here a demo how we do our meetings?
Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, VENUGEN has almost no learning curve. I just click the link in the email invitation I received, and my browser opens the 3D environment. To look around, I just click and drag on the screen. The mouse wheel lets me zoom my focus, and I can click the floor where I want to walk. I click on people or objects that I want to interact with. I think we need to probably stop that because it's not playing.
Hey, David, how's it going at demo?
Sorry, I think something's with the computers become unstable there, maybe with the PowerPoint crashing. So anyway, I'll be happy to show you what that looks like for real if you would like to see it. And sorry for the technical difficulties. Maybe we just move to some Q&A now.
Real quick, that NRG group net asked Mrs. President David Gardner, Wi-Fi is a sweet spot for 3D web production, but we have to improve audio engagement.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
Wants to know why 5 years was the sweet spot in 3D, but
What's so magical about the 5-year mark? That's kind of just a business truism. Bill Gates said in his first book that 5 years. And if you look at, like, for example, video on demand, we remember all the video stores were going to be gone. That was the application that was going to pave the information highway. 5 years came and went, and all the video stores were still here. But now what are you seeing? Now you're seeing the video stores close down, and Roku and Netflix and all really delivering video on demand. So just in business, 5 years is a typical time that it takes for technology to mature.
essentially it from Twitter. Does anybody in here have a question? If you do, we have a mic right there.
I can see people.
Or David,
Certainly can.
we want to make sure that
Thank you. I was saying I think this is the most exciting product I've seen here at the show so far. Do you guys have a booth here?
No.
Okay. What about bandwidth? Is this thing requiring more bandwidth than a typical webcast? What's it do to a corporation using it?
You could shout very loudly.
Oh, you're right. You've not got any mic. Yeah.
Sorry, I gave up my mic. The question was bandwidth.
There's a mic on the stand.
Everyone thinks that 3D like this requires a lot more bandwidth, and actually it requires up to 80% less bandwidth than using WebEx. And the reason for that is everything runs locally. So all you're receiving over the line is a highly optimized positioning stream, saying this person's looking that way and that person's this way. So it actually runs in a lot of situations. Also with our technology in particularly, we do screen sharing. When we use screen sharing, we use about the same bandwidth as WebEx. But when you drag a document in, we actually distribute that document to everyone. Then you're just controlling it. So when you say go to the next slide in a PowerPoint, you're sending a 2K command down telling everyone's PowerPoint slide to move. But it's all running locally. The other advantage of that is besides leaving all the bandwidth available for a better VoIP experience, it also creates better looking video. You ever looked at video when you're screen sharing? And so it's just a better architecture.
what size audience do you do this with?
For all 3D technologies, you're limited by the power of the video card. And generally, you want to run on video cards that are 7 years old, as a rule. And in order to run on video cards that are 7 years old, in general, you need to limit your number of avatars to about 60 per machine, per room. Now, you can have hundreds at a conference like this, but you can only have 60 that you visually see at the same time in the same room. And those are limitations. There are some interesting work going on to get around that today, but that's a good rule of thumb today.
Can I just add that I use VenueGen for meetings from home 3 to 4 times a week, and some of those meetings will go on for hours, and I have the attention span of a gnat.
I have a quick question for you. Does this technology require users to download any kind of application on their machines, or is this a universal kind of browser-based system that does not require that?
It is a browser plugin, and so you do need to download. It's about a 60-second download of a browser plugin.
Because one of the things, I work for IBM, and one of the big issues that we have is that many of our customers, in fact most of them, will not allow other software or our software to be downloaded on their systems for security reasons, for all kinds of reasons. So
Sure.
that was really the point of my question.
Yeah, and that is an issue. Unfortunately, 3D apps really need to, unless you do something Flash-based or Java-based, and in general, 3D applications that run interpretively through an interpretive language like that aren't going to have the performance. They're going to look, they're going to look at 400 polygons, kind of cartoonish. But to get a high fidelity environment, you need to install something in general. And we are working with some very large customers right now, installing on 2,000 desktops, and we just gave them the plug-in and they pushed it out. And so we do run into that, and we can update without them being administrators on their PCs.
What browsers do you currently support?
We support all the browsers today, and we have right now, just going into public beta, a Linux and a Mac version.
We've got more comments, questions from Twitter. Whiteley says, Dave, have you got any examples of senior executives from major corporations editing with their faces grafted onto avatars?
Well, I can tell you the CEO of a very large company said, David, I'd love to use this for everything, our internal training, our project management, but I'm not going to go in that meeting looking like a cartoon. And another guy told me my face is my brand. I don't go anywhere without it. And so I think the face is important. And this is a problem that video conferencing has had for years. Mm-hmm. People, what do? They cover up their webcam. They don't want to be on display, and they don't want to forget if they've got an itch. The avatar looks good. It's your best day always.
Ian Whiteley also asked, do you think it will take a bit of time to get people to really use the interface?
Well, like I said, there's a 30-second video that shows you everything you need to use in our application. And we've worked for years to get it that. The hardest thing that we did was the usability, was getting it to where people, and we kept testing with people who had never been in a 3D environment, because it had to be as quick and as easy to download and use as WebEx. And that was our mantra. But it's very intuitive. If you're sitting in a meeting, you're using your neck muscles. As people talk, you turn and you look. The only difference is now you're using your wrist muscles. And so after your first meeting, it feels quite natural. Thank you all. And
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.